Welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show with your host and facilitator, Mark Wallace. I am glad to be here with you on intellectualradio.com every Monday night from 7 o'clock till 9. We are focusing on the issues that matter to our communities. I want to be an informer of the issues to making sure that you and I both are locked into where we need to be. Hang on one second. Okay, just need to make sure that we have everything set the way we're supposed to. Seems like something is off. Sorry about that. There we go. All right. I just had to make sure that the screen was set. But anyway, we got a lot to talk about tonight. And we are going to talk about the differences between Democrats and Republicans. And there are differences between the Democratic Party, and there are differences between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So we are going to discuss that. I hear people talking about it all the time. I'm a registered Democrat. That doesn't mean that I'm a loyalist. I'm a registered Democrat because I share, or the Democratic Party as a whole, share the values that are best suited for the overall community, and certainly for the people in our community. And we're going to talk about the differences between, or some of the differences between the two. And there are stark differences between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Stark differences. So this idea that there's no difference between the two parties is a fallacy, and it is basically people who are emotionally misinformed, all right, in terms of the information. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about why you thought, those of you who still think or thought that what we have now is better than what we had, what we attained. So, you know, this was an article from the Dispatch, reader, asking the question, are you feeling liberated yet? If you're like me, you've tried very hard not to look at your 401k since last Wednesday, President Trump's promised Liberation Day, when investors recoiled from sweeping tariffs that Trump administration placed on all major trading partners and even a few penguins. A lot of the ink being spilled in recent days trying to defend Trump's action as some kind of four-dimensional chess move set to radically transform the global economy in the United States' favor. While pundits scramble to interpret these sweeping economic changes, finding reliable analysis has never been more difficult or more important. That's where the Dispatch comes in. They are not interested in speculation, questionable economic theories, or cryptocurrency salvos. They deliver thoughtful, well-researched economic clarity from experts that you can trust. They've published a lot of top-notch analysis over the last week, not only looking at what's happening to the global economy, but also diving into political and cultural forces that explain or don't why the White House is pursuing its sweeping tariff regime. And here are just a few samplings. Kevin D. Williamson's explain that burgeoning trade war, for those of us without an economic degree, tariffs do one thing and are intended to do one thing and nothing else. They give politically connected domestic firms an opportunity to raise their prices by removing lower price substitutes from the marketplace entirely or by putting upward pressure on the prices of those substitutes. Peter Gattuso used some Greek letters to explain how the Trump administration arrived at the tariff figures it did. I don't know what those Greek letters are, and are not variables in these particular equations. They are fixed numbers per USTR. The price elasticity of important demand was set at 4, and the elasticity of important prices with respect to tariffs is at 0.25. Multiply 4 by 0.25, and what you get is 1. That means the denominator comes out I times 1, which is just I. Jonah Goldberg analyzed the argument that Trump's tariffs are meant to spur the creation of American jobs. If Trump's Liberation Day plans are wildly successful, American consumers will get to buy much more expensive sneakers in exchange for a handful of good jobs running sneaker making robots. That sounds like a really stupid trade-off. Those are just a few of economists that are talking about what is happening. We also found today that maybe Donald Trump is yet again the lawless thug in chief, is violating the Constitution and violating the law as it relates to using tariffs. There are laws compiled with and by Congress that the president has to follow, and procedures that they have to follow in order to use tariffs. So this question is, I think it's an easy question, but we can look at everything that this administration is doing, and almost without fail, because they are using executive orders without going through Congress, because they don't want to govern. They don't want to go through the process. They are basically telling us and demonstrating to us that they don't appreciate and certainly don't respect law and order, governing rules and procedures in order to get things done. That's why you have 435 members in the House of Representatives. That's why you have 100 members in the United States Senate. And you have to find consensus, and you have to find cooperation between the two in order for you to govern or to pass agendas that you, as the President of the United States, believe that is going to be better for the American people. And the reason why you have 435 members of Congress, or 435 members of the House of Representatives, and you have 100 members of the Senate, is that we have 2 senators and we have several congressional representatives, depending on the population of the state that we live in, so that those persons go and represent the will and the desires of their constituents. That means that those 435 members in the House of Representatives and those 100 members of the Senate are there on behalf of the rest of us, and we are not interested, and we are not abdicating the duties of those representatives. And for a president who wants to be king and to bypass the legislative process of consent and cooperation and agreement. That's the way that our government is set up. That is the way that the founders set our Constitution and the founders set up our government. Not for us to have a king, not for us to have a dictator, or not for us to have a CEO. We don't have a CEO. We have a president. And the government has limited powers, and the president have limited powers. And all are set up to be checked by the other. That's why they're called co-equal systems and branches of our government. But there are some of you who thought that this was the better alternative for us. Now, but there's also some of us who, we've gotten 50 cents above poverty and that sort of thing. And some people are a little excited about where their 401ks and their investments. I've talked to a few friends of mine, and they've lost a couple $100,000 on their investments as a result of the shrinkage of the stock market. Now, over half of the country do not participate in the stock market, but it is a telling sign of bad decisions by the executive branch of our government. Now, we have never been here before, so we don't know to what extent the damage is going to be done. There are going to be damage. There's going to be damage. There's not going to be a plus side to this, as he is telling you that it is going to be. So, and there's not much that we're going to be able to do about it, because at this point, you don't have enough people who are in the Congress that has the courage, that has the character, and certainly that has the consciousness to be the representative that they were elected to be. They don't have the courage, they don't have the consciousness, and they certainly don't have the character to keep this person in check and to reject this idea of wanting to blow up the entire system. Nobody is objecting to change, but that change has to be a collaborative change. If there was no reason for us to have members of Congress, representatives in the House, and representatives in the Senate, then we would just send them home. But we have a government that is set up and is structured as such. But I got to tell you, those of you who are having buyer's remorse, how is it that you have buyer's remorse? I want to know, why did you even saw this as something attractive to buy? I saw absolutely nothing there to buy except for someone who has already, for more than 50 years, demonstrated to us exactly who he is and only what he cares about, and that is not about anybody else outside of himself, not even his own wife and children. They are expendable if they would ever dare to go against him. So this is a person who lives in a silo unto himself and his allegiance to his bigoted, evil, racist, dead father. That's who he is aligned with. And the country and the world are going to bear the consequences of someone who is so misguided and so misdirected for whatever their motivations are. I'm not even going to pretend to get into their little warped mind. Whatever their motivations are, their actions are not good for the whole. But we're going to see the elasticity of our governmental structure. We're going to see if the Constitution holds and resists the tyranny of Muskrat and Donald Trump and those who enabled him. We're going to see how our government, what the strength of that is, what the band strength of it is, if it will be able to withstand and be stretched, not broken, to be able to hold the tyrannical views and conduct in check. We're going to see if, in fact, that is what's happening. Now, as I said to you a little bit later on in the program, I am going to go through some policy differences. I'm going to go through some policy differences. These are reports from the United States Treasury. And these are reports of the Biden-Harris administration and their policy and legislative accomplishments and who they impacted and certainly would have impacted. I'm going to go through that. Some of that, might not be able to get to all of it, but I'm going to go through it because I want to ask the question of those of you who thought that what we have now is better. And I just want to ask some questions why you thought that that was better. Now, the behavior of this administration, and what they are doing is siphoning down to the local state areas. This past week, some more people were made aware of a policy that is being put into play. Now, I have reached out to members of the bar, meaning attorneys, trying to get some attorneys to come on to talk about this. But even if they don't join me, I am perfectly in place, perfectly capable of being able to carry out this conversation. Now, the Cook County State's Attorney, Eileen O'Neill Burke, who unfortunately we made another bad decision of electing Eileen O'Neill Burke because she is operating in the same manner. She's operating in the same manner as the president is on the federal level. She's operating on the local level. She was elected in November. In December, she decided that she was going to roll back as many of the policies and undo any of the work that Kim Foxx put into place that she was going to reopen the well of the pipeline to prison for young Black men in order for the capitalists who own prisons and who have contracts, so that their contracts continue to be fulfilled at hurling and cattling young Black men into the penal system. That's the sole, under the disguise that she is making our communities safer. And there are some Black folks who stood behind her and supported her, ignorantly supported her. I hope it was ignorantly, because if you supported her and you supported her with open eyes, despite of her history, that's a whole nother problem. But for whatever the reason is, in this climate, in this time, there are more of us that want to make stupid decisions that don't benefit the whole, and that you are not aware of how this impacts the future. Much of the damage that is to come, many of us won't be around when it comes. Ronald Reagan came into office in 1980. And in 1980, Ronald Reagan decided that his mantra was going to be to get tough on crime. And to get tough on crime, he put on steroids Richard Nixon's war on drugs, which was really Richard Nixon's tagline, but it was Ronald Reagan that put it on steroids and to really put it into play. When Ronald Reagan came into office in 1980, there were less than 180,000 Black men in prison. When Ronald Reagan came into office in 1980, there were less than 180,000 Black men in prison. After the declaration, and mind you, Ronald Reagan announced that he was running for president when he went down to Philadelphia, Mississippi, where the 4 activists were brutally murdered. That's where he chose to go to make his announcement that he was going to be running for the president of the United States. So Ronald Reagan put the war on drugs in place on steroids. Then we move forward that every person who was running for a national office, for Congress or Senate, their tag and their mantra was to be tough on crime. It was the popular thing to do, and it was, in some regards, played to the emotions of the voters to get them to vote for you. Not that you had any intentions on doing anything constructive, but it was the game to play at the time and the strategy to use. Now, here we are 13% of the population, yet we are 30% of all incarcerated in this country. 1.2 million Black men incarcerated, while whites use drugs at the same rate as Black people do, yet Black people are 30% of all incarcerated in the industrial prison system throughout this United States, even though we're only 13% of the population. So I wanted to set that up to give you a little background. More recently, there were 4 teenagers confessed in 1995 to a murder because of a grueling interrogation by Chicago City, the City of Chicago Police Department. They endured growing up in prison. There was a $50 million judgment awarded to them for decades of wrongfully spending behind bars, which will never be enough money to compensate for the betrayal of the Chicago Police Department and the state's attorney. There are another $250 million in settlements for wrongful convictions people due to the Chicago police. Chicago is now known as the wrongful conviction capital of the country. More than 540 exonerations of wrongfully convicted people in Illinois. Ranking is only followed that by Texas, which is the second leading state of wrongful convictions of 474. The most recent exonerees, LaShawn Ezel, Charles Johnson, LaRod Stiles, and Troyshawn McCoy. Get this, they collectively spent 73 years, 876 months, 3,504 weeks, 24,528 days, 588,672 hours, 35,320,320 minutes of wrongful imprisonment at the hands and lips of corrupt Chicago police and an enabled Cook County State's Attorney's Office. Now, I wanted you to hear this because I wanted to set this up. Here you have the Cook County State's Attorneys, Eileen O'Neill Burke, and the Superintendent of Police, a Black man, and other Black men, and a few women that are in senior positions at the police department that are in support of what we are about to go through. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office expands a pilot program streamlined to charging process for low-level gun possession cases. More efficient charging process gets police officers back on the street. Now, this is under their disguise. This is the tag that they use for everything that it relates around criminalizing or abusing their powers or abdicating their duty to the Constitution. It is always about trying to efficientize personnel. And here they're talking about well, we need to get police officers back on the street so that they could be investigating homicides and shootings and, more serious crimes. Well, let me say this. Homicides, shootings, violent crime are on their way down. We have them, but they're on their way down. So the Chicago Cook County State's Attorney, Eileen O'Neill Burke, and the Chicago Police Superintendent, Larry Snelling, announced the expansion of what they call a successful pilot program that streamlines the charging process for lower level felony gun cases, easing a significant strain on police and prosecutor resources across Chicago. So they want to have it more convenient for them. They don't want to be put out, and they believe that it should be easier for them to upturn and to charge somebody who has allegedly committed an offense, that somehow that should be streamlined so that they could go to dinner with their family. That it should be easier for the police to railroad young Black men into a system that is already compromised and has a lack of integrity and a lack of trustworthiness, in particular by our communities. And it's well deserving. John Burge and John Burge-like that existed and still does exist in some places on the Chicago Police Department. I wouldn't dare sit here and suggest that there are not some bad actors within the Chicago Police Department. And I also wouldn't sit here and say that everybody in the Chicago Police Department are bad actors. And you would ask, well, why are you harping down on the Chicago police? I'm not harping down on the Chicago police. What I am doing is talking about the history of the Chicago police that is not a good one. And that somehow we should trust, as I heard one commander repeat several times yesterday, that we should trust them that they're going to do the right thing. No, we don't trust that you're going to do the right thing. We want to hold you accountable to do the right thing, but we don't trust that you're going to do the right thing. We're not giving deference to trusting that you're going to do the right thing with the soiled history that the Chicago Police Department has. There are people who are retired from the Chicago Police Department that finally found a voice after spending 30 years being silent and watching members of the Chicago Police Department take advantage of and trample on the constitutional rights of some person that allegedly, that they brought in, that allegedly committed a crime. Or that there is this repeat offender that they have decided that they are going to relegate to being anything less than being a human being. Oh, I get it. I get how you can devalue somebody to be something less than a human being. Then you don't have any accountability and you don't have any responsibility for treating them as decent human being or a human being with problems. Because they are still human beings. Some of them are a lot more challenging. And some of them need to be held accountable. I'm not talking about them, and I'm not going to allow for you to suck me into that whole kind of thing, because I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I am talking about those who have been entrusted with the power to follow the law, to enforce the law, that you should not be compromising the law for your convenience because you happen to have spent more time waiting for the review process that is mandated by law. I'm sorry, felony review is not mandated by law, but waiting for an assistant state's attorney to show up so that the assistant state's attorney can look at the arrest, look at the evidence, and make a determination on whether or not a complaint by the police should be moved to a felony filed in court. A police officer does not have the power to do that. A police officer did not go to law school for 3 years and did not come to Illinois and pass the Illinois State Bar in order for them to practice law here in Cook County, Chicago, or the state. They are not lawyers. They are not assistant state's attorneys. And we ought not be allowing for them to carry out such an illegal, this is illegal. There are people, public defenders, who have made statements that this is absolutely illegal. I have some statements from public defenders that I will not read, or certainly I would not mention their names because I have not spoken with them and they have not given me the express approval to use their statements publicly. But I will tell you that I have not spoken to an attorney who understands the Constitution, who understands the Illinois state statute, that agrees that the Cook County Estate's attorney, the top lawyer prosecutor, is abdicating her responsibility to defend, also and to uphold the Constitution. This is clearly in direct violation of this. The pilot was initially launched in January at the Chicago Police Department's 7th District in Englewood, which is a community that is 91% Black, and enables responding police officers in consultation with their supervisors to file certain common nonviolent felony gun possession charges directly instead of waiting for Cook County State's Attorney's Office felony review approval, based on positive results from the 7th District, where all bypass cases have thus far withstood legal scrutiny. The pilot is expanding to CPD's 5th Police District, Calumet, effective April the 7th. Now, let me point out to you, because many of you were not at the town hall, unfortunately, because you probably didn't know anything about it, but there was a town hall that was held Saturday at noon at Ogden Park. This police commission or oversight commission that we voted for and elected people for in the districts to work with the police department, collaborating with the police department to make sure that there is better, fair, equitable policing in the districts knew nothing about this. I learned about this 30 days after Eileen was elected. Every single attorney thus far that I've spoken to said that this is illegal. It is not legal. That means that we are going to have to file a lawsuit to stop the Cook County State's Attorney from violating the law. Now, they go on to say that the felony review bypass program is an effort to address long-standing bottleneck in Cook County's criminal justice system. You don't fast track or you don't bypass the process because you have a personnel problem. You don't compromise any human being's constitutional rights and equal protection under the law for the convenience or the inconvenience that police officers may be enduring because there are not enough police officers to carry the workload. Well, that's what you signed up for. But it is not our responsibility to make your situation so much more comfortable because you got a personnel problem and you don't have enough help. You don't have enough police officers. I get it. But there is never a time that justifies you violating someone's constitutional rights of enjoyment. Now, in the town hall meeting, I forget the woman's name from the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, but somebody told me in that same meeting that the Cook County State's Attorney's Office or the Cook County State's Attorney said that she doesn't come to town halls or she would never come to such a meeting. I don't know how true that is, but we're going to find out because we are probably going to have to initiate a lawsuit rejecting this and having the court to play a role into rejecting the idea of abdicating the assistant state's attorney's responsibility to the police, all because there's a shortage in personnel. And you need to make sure that you can get done early so you can go have dinner with your family. So the idea is it is okay to trample on somebody else's constitutional protections, just as long as you can make your dinner appointment. That's okay. It's not okay under any circumstances. We don't sit here and advocate for people violating the law. No more do we advocate for people violating the law with guns or drugs or any other negative in our communities. But we also don't agree with abdicating the responsibility or the adherence to the law of someone's rights just because they might be someone who has involved themselves in criminal activity. Under neither circumstances should someone's constitutional protections be compromised. That's precisely what this is. And we're going to have to file a lawsuit that demands that the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and the Cook County State's Attorney follow and complies with the law. That is what you and I are going to have to do. Now, Raymond Lopez, I don't have his video. I wish I had his video. But Raymond Lopez stood up and started talking about the victims. Well, according to their own release, there are 3 of these so-called low-level cases: unlawful possession of a weapon, unlawful possession of a weapon by a felon, and aggravated unlawful possession of a weapon. What they are saying is that there's no victims. Nobody got shot. None of the guns were shot when they confiscated them or they made the arrest. So there's no victim. Well, you had Alderman Lopez talking about 46 victims. He must have been talking about the arrestees, because the arrestees, they were arrested without there being any oversight. So if there's no victims, I wonder how they are arresting these people, or how they're finding out that these people are in possession, illegally in possession of a firearm. I just wonder. They said that all cases, wait, let me read it again. It says that I must be reading it wrong. It says that in this pilot program, initially launched in the 7th District of Inglewood, that enables the police officers, in consulting with their supervisors, to file common nonviolent felony gun possession charges directly instead of waiting for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office felony review. Based on positive results from the 7th District, where all bypassed cases have thus far withstood legal scrutiny. Not so. What she told us, that there were 46 of these cases, 46 cases. Of the 40, 30 of them, according to her, we haven't seen the evidence or have been able to verify, but according to her, 30 of the 46 withstood the scrutiny of the court. 30 of the 46. You know what that means? That means that the other 16 that did not, the 35% that did not meet the requirements of the court for charges to have been filed, 35% of the 46, it's still 35%, did not make it. So if 35% didn't make it, that means you had a grade of 65%. In most schools that I know, that 65% is a D, borderlining a failure. So you only got 65%. 35% didn't withstand the judicial review. Now, what that means is that you arrested 16 people who should not have been arrested. They could have lost their job. They now have an arrest that was not warranted. And what will be the compensation for it? There won't be any compensation for it. At least not to this point, because if the Cook County State's Attorney and the Chicago Police Department are violating the law, we will file a lawsuit. We're going to file a lawsuit calling for the Supreme Court, the Illinois State Supreme Court, to weigh in and calling for the Cook County State's Attorney to reverse this policy and do their job. This is what you signed up for. The system is not perfectly filled with personnel, then work on getting more personnel in place so that you can do your job and do your job properly without compromising someone else's dignity, without compromising someone else's constitutional privileges and rights. And stop using our community as guinea pigs. Now, I know that this is going to fall on deaf ears of those people. What is also astonishing to me is the level of ignorance that even our representatives who found out about this have about the actual details of it. Because none of them stood up there in the town hall meeting. None of them stood up in the town hall meeting and said that it was illegal, and it is in fact illegal, which means to me, none of them sought counsel or consultation from someone of the Illinois Bar to advise them on who has the powers to charge. Well, let's just go back a little bit. So, of course, I had to do a little more digging and use a little bit of the training that I have to find out this information. So I was supposed to have a couple of attorneys that were going to come on. A public defender was going to come on, but they were not able to come on because of conflict in their schedule. And I thought that I was going to have an attorney on, Attorney Baumgart, that was going to come on. But it's okay. I can handle it. So I found here in the criminal procedures, this is by Gino L. DeVito, who is a retired justice of the Illinois Appellate Court, who is now a partner with Quinn and Grisham Limited. In these writings, here is the commencement of prosecution. And I want to go through this because I want to set it up, because I want you to know this is according to the statute. And I want to kind of go through it a little bit so that you can, the details of it, but I want you to hear what the Constitution and what the statute says. Not some hyperbole, not somebody's, unsupported opinion. Now, I haven't spoken to a single attorney who says that this is legal. There may be, well, there is one out there, at least that we know, which is the Cook County State's Attorney. And the police officers are not jurists. They're not attorneys. So you don't look to them for an answer. Now, the commencement of, let me give myself a little bit more light. The commencement of prosecution in Illinois, the prosecution of a criminal offense begins with the filing of a complaint. Who gets to file the complaint? A complaint, an information, or an indictment. All three are written statements or charges. Charge is the generic term that encompasses a complaint. So when you hear that the police have charged someone with a ticket or charged them of some sort of crime, it's nothing more than a complaint. In all cases, the charge must state the name of the accused, the date of the offense, the county or venue in which the offense was committed, the name of the offense, and the statutory provision. Statutory provision means the statute, the state statute. Provisions alleged to have been violated and the elements of the offense charged. A complaint is signed under oath, usually by a police officer, complaining witness, or other person having knowledge of the criminal act alleged. So anybody can file a complaint. Anybody. You can file a complaint. The police can file a complaint. That is within the statute. A complaint frequently initiates a felony charge. It generally is the charging document filed in, get this, in a preliminary hearing court. In a preliminary hearing court, a police officer cannot go and file a case before the court. Why? Because they're not attorneys. They're not prosecutors. They can't do it. They don't have the powers to do so. As indicated below, either information or indictment must be filed for felony trial to occur. That means that somebody has to draw up a complaint, they have to draw up a motion, they have to draw up counts that have been violated according to the state statute. A police officer does not have the power to do that. They don't have the legal authority to do it. Whether the Cook County State's Attorney, Eileen O'Neill Burke, gave it to them or not, she does not have the power to give somebody the authority to violate the law. None of us have that power. None of us have the authority to tell somebody to go violate the law. This is essentially what we see happening right now with the so-called 46 cases, of which 35% of them didn't meet the bar. So what happened to those 35%? We don't know, and we may never know, but I think we should try and find out. Because the only thing that he wanted to tell us about is the 30, the alleged 30, that according to the policy person from the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, all withstood the legal scrutiny and standards of the court. So 65% they claim withstood it, 35% did not. Now, mind you, this is how they operate here. This is how they operate in Cook County. This is how they operate in the city. They are only going to give you the information that they want to give you. And unless you understand the language, and unless you are catching what it is that they are not saying, their hope is that they can say something to you in a way that gives you a confidence or that what they're saying is okay. Well, we were at that town hall on Saturday. We were at the town hall on Saturday, and after the policy person, she called herself the B team, after the B team got up and gave us their whole dissertation about what they thought this was and why, in a sense, that we should trust that process. You should never trust any process where somebody is willing to compromise the law, who is sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution. Swear to an oath. As lawyers, we swear to an oath that we will uphold, defend, and protect the Constitution. That means defend and protecting your rights. That's what that means. So how could you ever ask someone to trust someone who will, with the lights on, ask and put into place a policy to violate the law? Now, I said to you before, we are the capital of wrongful convictions in the United States of America. 540 exonerations of wrongfully convicted people in Illinois, which tops the ranking, and the only state to follow it is Texas with 474. And we should trust the Cook County State's Attorney, and we should trust the Chicago Police Department. This is not to say that we are against the police. What we are for is for accountability, and we are for people doing what is right. What we reject is you having the unmitigated gall to find a way to say to us that, we can use the excuse that we don't have enough manpower, and we can say that we can put this policy in place because it'll get police back on the streets where they could be following up on gun shootings and murders and yada, yada, yada. All of that sort of stuff to try to play on people's emotions or to play on our, senses about what we think about crime but all we're talking about is how we can easily punish people, how we can easily upturn people's lives. That's what we're talking about. That's what they're talking about. Now, I want to give some analysis to how policies happen to roll out in Chicago, whether it be with the county, whether it be with the city. Now, the statistics are showing that violent crimes, gun crimes, crimes in general are going down, which means there are fewer people going into the prison system. Violent crimes, gun crimes are going down. They're not down low enough, obviously, but they're going down. They're going in the right direction. Again, which means that there are fewer people being processed through the system. The easiest way to get those numbers up are to compromise the process. You're compromising the process by giving someone who is not qualified to do a job. You're giving a police officer who has not gone to law school, who has not spent 3 years understanding the Constitution, reading the Constitution, understanding the theories of practice. And now you want to put a police officer in the place of what a licensed, trained lawyer who has withstood the test of being educated as a lawyer, passing the bar, and a licensed attorney that provides the credentials that you have the wherewithal to practice law. A lawyer is giving a non-lawyer the power to provide prosecutorial decisions. I want you to get this. I want you to understand how egregious this is. I am not sitting here advocating for people who are out violating the law by any stretch of the imagination. But what I am sitting here is as a lawyer who understands that you swear to the oath to defend and to protect the Constitution of the state and the United States of America. That means that you are defending and protecting the rights of every individual who may be charged with an offense, that person has equal protection under the law as anybody else. That's what I stand for. I don't condone people violating the law, but I'm not going to condone someone who thinks that they're above the law to violate that person's constitutional rights because you believe that that person has committed a crime or they have been charged with that offense. Well, then you have to follow the Constitution and you have to be the trier of facts. So you have to bring the evidence and you have to weigh that evidence and you have to look at the arrest that a police officer made to make sure that that police officer did not violate that person's constitutional protections. That's why it's important for the state's attorney, the assistant state's attorney, the ASA, and all these acronyms that they use to get their behinds down to the police station when a police officer has brought someone in that has allegedly committed an offense and make the determination with your training that this is, the evidence is there to provide that this person committed the alleged offense. The police do not have that authority and don't have that power and should not be filing felony charges when the Illinois state statute says that you cannot. Let me just go on a little bit further and continue with what Justice DeVito has written according to the statute. A complaint signed under oath, usually by a police officer, complaining witness, or other persons having knowledge of a criminal act alleged. A complaint frequently initiates a felony charge and generally in charging and a document charged in the preliminary hearing court, but as indicated below, either an information or indictment must be filed for a felony trial to occur. A police officer can't do it. A complaint alone, however, is sufficient to bring the prosecution of the petty offenses and misdemeanors, which means that A police officer who gives a person a traffic ticket or writes a parking ticket, they don't have to go through the assistant state's attorney for that because it's a misdemeanor. And so they can give you the complaint, which is a citation, a ticket that they write, and they give it to you. That is the formal complaint, and it'll be registered. And then you can go to court and you can contest it, or you can acknowledge and plead to it. In such cases, a court may proceed to trial solely upon a complaint without any further determination or probable cause. A traffic citation issued by a peace officer serves the same function as a formal complaint in charging violations of the Illinois Vehicle Code. When the charge is a felony, a waiver of preliminary hearing by an accused person, a finding of probable cause by a judge, or a grand jury indictment is necessary before the court can proceed to a trial on charge. You know what that means? That means in order for it to get before a court, a police officer cannot go and file a charge before a court. Only a prosecutor can do that. A police officer is not given that authority. They're not a barred attorney. They don't have a license to practice. That's not what their job is. Police officers arrest and detain. Assistant state's attorneys or the state's attorney's office reviews the arrests, reviews the evidence and the complaint that is brought by the police and makes a determination that this is an offense of a felony and that the state's attorney's office is filing charges in court to be tried before a judge or the jury of their peers, unless otherwise pled by the accused. It is very clear where he goes on to say an indictment in the charge brought by a grand jury, which can initiate proceedings against an accused, consider evidence before or after a judge's findings of probable cause. None of that can happen. None of that can happen by a police officer. Show me ever when a police officer can go to the circuit court and file charges, file a case, file a complaint in the circuit court, take it down to the circuit court, the now clerk, I forget her name, was it Stephanopoulos or whatever her name is? Now, I spoke with people within the clerk's office today. They knew nothing about it. Nothing of it whatsoever. Nothing. I wish some of the other attorneys could have gotten on. We're going to be talking about this. I've been talking about this last night. Martin talked about it on his program. We are going to continue to talk about this. Not only do we have to talk about it, we have to mobilize. We're probably going to initiate a lawsuit. And so I'm going to continue to talk with members of the Public Defender's Office. I believe that the Public Defender's Office will join in a lawsuit. We are going to move forth and to ensure that people's constitutional rights are protected. We are not going to allow, and when I say we, those of us who care, and I hope that you are a part of the we. So we are going to organize and mobilize. If you are not a part, and certainly you are not registered with 10 by 10 to win, I want to ask you to please register at 10 by 10 to win by getting into the text alert, because we're going to be talking about this on Thursday night, that we are going to continue to work to mobilize and organize ourselves together, so that we will probably have to do a press conference, but we certainly are going to continue to talk with other attorneys, public defenders, prosecutors, or maybe prosecutors who know that this is wrong, that will join in to this lawsuit. We are going to have to appeal to the Supreme Court to reject and reverse this. Now, let me talk about our Black public officials. There must be some type, and I'm borrowing this from Al Sharpton, where he said that there must be some type of sanitizer that Black people who get elected to public office go through when they go downtown, because they seem to forget that they're Black and connected to the Black community. Because what I saw on Saturday by Raymond Lopez, who got up and who exposed how ignorant he was of this policy by talking about 46 victims when there are no victims. There are no victims. Even though they're calling these low-level felonies, the fact that they're felonies, that they're violating the law. Anybody can file a complaint of a misdemeanor. You can file a complaint of a misdemeanor. But the fact that he would get up there and he would start talking about trying to defend this and trying to deflect, he would start talking about the victims. There are no victims. The victims are the people that are being victimized by Eileen Burke. Those are the victims. Let me make sure that I find, oh, here it is, here. This is in their own press release. He got up, and I don't have the clip, but if I had it, I would play it so that you can see it. So this is in their own press release. Before the pilot launched, the senior Cook County State's Attorney's Office Policy and Felony Review Unit leadership conducted 12 in-person trainings at the 7th District. All this was, where they called it a collaboration with the police department. It wasn't a collaboration, it was collusion between the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and the Chicago Police Department. 12 in-person trainings at the 7th District and now the 5th District. Roll calls. At their roll calls, where all officers and command staff received extensive instructions on the legal criteria for each of the eligible charges. The 3 eligible charges are unlawful possession of a weapon, unlawful possession of a weapon by a felon, and aggravated unlawful possession of a weapon. All cases including in the program are tracked and reviewed by prosecutors as they progress through the courts. Well, they're supposed to be. And they're supposed to be initiated by prosecutors, not by police officers. So the prosecutors, as the policymaker, wanted to brag about how, she was working on New Year's Eve, and she went through this training and to make sure that the police officers were adequately equipped while her family was waiting for her to go to dinner. What I am saying to us, that where is our insult to injury threshold? Where is it? Do we have an insult level that we would permit and we would even allow for ourselves to be compromised, to suggest that this is justified because there are people who are out as bad actors in our communities, that because there are some people who are bad actors, that we should violate the constitutional protection of anybody because there are some bad actors. There are some people who are just bad actors in our communities. But has anybody ever asked a question, seriously asked the question, why do we have so much access to drugs and guns so easily in our communities? What is it that has produced these kinds of environments? These are the questions that I want to know. These are the questions that we have to critically think about and ask, rather than, rearing back and, sticking your chest out about how righteous and good you may be, because there's some people out there who are engaged in activity that is counterproductive. Is the question ever asked why? Well, let's just look at some elements. In Inglewood, in Roseland, on the west side of Chicago, where you have these high rates of unemployment of Black males between the ages of 18 to 25 at 47% today, to their white male counterpart that lives on the north side of Chicago, that lives on the northwest side of Chicago, that lives near downtown of Chicago, that their unemployment rate at the same level, at the same age group of 18 to 25 is at 7% in the same city. The socioeconomic divide, where in those areas you have about 30 jobs to every one person. On the south and west sides of Chicago, you have 30 people to every job that may be available. What that tells me is that there's a serious socioeconomic condition that produced these environments. So when you sit and you rear back with your arrogance to talk about, these young people out here that don't want to go to school, don't want to do anything, don't want to do this, or don't want to do that, but you don't ask the question as to why are these conditions produced the way they are in our communities. In the 1950s, in the 1960s, and in the 1970s, we didn't have these high rates of violence. Why? Because in the 1950s, in the 1960s, and the 1970s, in Chicago, on the south and west sides of Chicago, 70% of all Black employment was in labor, where you could come out of high school, go into a manufacturer 15 or 20 minutes from your home and get a very good paying job. Some of our fathers, some of your fathers, some of your aunts and uncles retired from those plants. They bought homes, they bought cars, they took you on a vacation, and they put people through college. Because we had an economic foundation in our communities. So I am not going to be one of these people who join you in vilifying people who have been forced into a condition by disinvestment, by legislation that allowed for corporations to offshore their jobs for the last 45 years, that created this sinkhole of despair in social economics in our communities. Wherever you have a bunch of people with fewer resources, they are going to be at conflict. Wherever you have high rates of poverty, high rates of unemployment, you are going to have high rates of bad activity, meaning violence, drug use, domestic situations. You're going to have all of that. So we cannot have these conversations in a vacuum without understanding the totality of the situation and the conditions. It's not an excuse. It is inextricably tied to what we see happening. When you go to Inglewood and you see blocks and blocks and blocks of vacant land where there were once housing in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And what was conjoined with that is that there was industry that was able to undergird the communities where people were able to have access to jobs. They didn't have to worry about somebody breaking into their home, taking their colored television, as we say at the time. This is not about, as I heard somebody saying the other night on Martin's show, that people like Michael Jordan and athletes this and athletes that. Our dependency and our survivalship and our thriving is not dependent based upon professional athletes. We have a social economic structure called a government that has the responsibility for creating the opportunities and leveraging industry that provides for people to participate, because everybody's not looking to be a basketball player and everybody's not interested in being rich. And furthermore, communities are stronger by its working class than they ever have been by wealthy people. Those are the facts. So this ideology, I don't care about what Michael Jordan does. I don't care about what Charles Barkley does. Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley are going to, God bless them. They were blessed to be in the place to have the life that they have, but they are not the rule. They are not what we should be looking to. Most people get up every day that go to work and go to a job. They get up and they go and they work hard and they are proud of their jobs. Some of them make really good livings. Some of them make a pretty good living. But most people go to work and come home because they're proud of the work that they do. Those are the people that I look to. I don't look to Michael Jordan and Oprah Winfrey and all those other. I'm not impressed by that. I'm happy for them, but that's not where we need to be focusing our attention. The way you build an agrarian society is that you must have a urban planning, comprehensive structure in place. We have not had an urban planning department since really Harold Washington. The Department of Planning has become innocuous. You don't even hear about it. There's not even discussion about having an urban planning development. That's what a PUD is. And economic development is not putting a Starbucks or a whatever that other coffee joint is on the corner, or opening up a few senior citizens' homes. That's not economic development. Economic development is when you are inviting industry to undergird and to provide thousands and to bring the industries into our areas that hire and train from the workforce in our areas, that people can start and retire from these industries by partnering with these industries, so that the industries do very well, and they do very well because of the workforce that helps them to do well. And in exchange for that, the workforce is paid a very good salary and giving good benefits so that they can be able to take care of their families and have the wherewithal to take their family on a vacation and to have some leisure time activity, to buy a home and to live a pretty comfortable life. That is what the average person is looking for. But that is what makes a community rich. When you have thousands of people who are working, earning a decent living, then you will be able to have small businesses to open up in your corridors, that these thousands of people who now have really good career paying jobs, that they can go in their own communities and support people's restaurants and buy their goods and services who look like us, where we don't have to have strips and strips and strips of vacant storefronts. Where we have more churches, or just as many churches and set up in storefronts that we have liquor stores on the corners. And I am not anti-church, because I am born and raised as a follower of Christ. But I'm not even going to get into the bastardization of the church. That's a whole different discussion, and I'm perfectly willing to have that conversation, but that's not tonight. What I am saying to you is that we have to stop adjusting to abnormality by the people who we have entrusted with positions to represent us. That does not mean that we put them in the positions to represent us and that we sit on the sideline. That means we put them into positions to represent us and we hold them accountable to deliver. So that means that we have a responsibility ourselves, not to just sit around and complain about what somebody is not doing, but to get engaged and to deal with what those people who we have put into position are not doing, and to put ourselves in the position to make them do that, what they're supposed to be doing. Saturday, there was Will Hall, who was the alderman of the 6th Ward, which is the ward that I now live in. There was Stephanie Coleman, who was the alderman, I believe, of the 16th Ward. There was David Moore, who was the alderman of the 17th Ward. And I believe Raymond Lopez, I can't remember which, maybe he's the 15th Ward. And there was, did I get everybody there? The aldermen that were there? Yeah, 4 aldermen were there. And all, you know, they were walking around like they were in a fraternity or something. We spend too much time celebritizing public servants because that's what they are, public servants. I am fed up with politicians. In fact, I don't want to be bothered with politicians. I am interested in those who know that they're supposed to be public servants. And I want you to know that that's what they are, public servants. You and I are the public. They are our servants. We don't need to be celebritizing them. We spend too much time celebritizing public servants and they buy into it because that's all I can hear them doing all that whitewashing on Saturday. I have zero alliances to anybody who is a politician or in one of those positions. Zero. My alliance is always going to be with the public. And we need to be aligned together so that we can hold them in check. We have the wherewithal to do it. We just have not put it together. And when we don't put it together, the kinds of things that Eileen O'Neill Burke just instituted, without there being any conversation, without there being any community input or involvement, the arrogance of them suggests that we will be asleep at the switch and won't do anything anyway. So who's going to stop me from doing it? That is the attitude that they take. And to some degree, they're right. More of us don't participate, don't engage. Some of us don't engage because we don't think that our engagement will make a difference. Let me tell you, I don't care what your level of education is or is not. I don't care what your level of astutely is about public policy or what's going on politically is or is not. As a living, breathing citizen, you are as powerful as the next person, but you are also as weak as the next person if you do not just simply engage. If you sit on the sideline, you make the rest of us weak, weaker. So no matter who it is, we have to be engaged. Now, let me go to this because I know while I got a few minutes left, I know that there is a lot of silly talk, a lot of ignorant talk about the differences between the Democratic Party and what we have now. And there are differences. I was going to have a little fun, and I might have a little fun because I've got some clips that I may play, just some fun clips to kind of lighten it up. I have been doing radio and podcasts now for about 15 years. I was on WVON, started back in 2009. As I said, I'm a registered Democrat. I'm going to remain a Democrat. And the reason that I'm a Democrat is because it is through the Democratic Party we have been able to make the kinds of progressions that we've been able to make. There have been no progressions, no proposals, no policies that the Republicans of the last 50 60 years have put forth that even remotely show any kind of concern for the broader community of working people and certainly the Black community. They are able to manipulate certain social, cultural issues for their own political prowess and benefits. But I want to go through some policies that were put into place under the previous administration, under the Biden-Harris administration, that they were able to put into place that are now being compromised by the current administration. These are policies that are and investments that are supposed to come to the state of Illinois. Every state has it, but I wanted to deal with what's coming to Illinois, and I'll also deal with some national stuff. In the 4 pieces of legislation, monumental legislations that was crafted and drafted by the Biden-Harris team, bringing billions of dollars that are a threat to the state of Illinois that will benefit many of our communities for decades to come. You can get this information. To check it, you can go to the Department of Treasury, to the Treasury Department, and you can get the record, like I did. You can get the record. But in case you haven't, I just want to go through just some of this to tell you why I am a Democrat. Not that the Democratic Party or Democrats are perfect. There's no such thing. And we need to press and press harder for them to deliver, even in our local area. I believe in holding people accountable. I can support you, but I can also challenge you. I can support you. I'm not going to enable you. See, supporting you is to support you when you are doing things that are good and great for the community at large. To enable you is to suggest that we can't criticize you because it'll seem like we're not supporting you. I'm not going to enable someone to do something that is not healthy for our community. That's enabling. I'm going to support you, but I'm also going to challenge you. And challenging you is only making you, or at least hoping that it makes you think about policies that you're doing. Listen, governing is very difficult. It's not easy. It is not easy to govern. That's why it takes a bunch of us to be involved. It's not easy to govern, but it's absolutely doable. And we need to make sure we get it right and that it's equitable. So in the Investing in America Act, or it's not an act, but it is the agenda that delivered, policies passed, money appropriated. In Illinois, through the Biden-Harris administration, as recorded by the Treasury Department, $8.4 billion in private sector commitments and $16.6 billion in public investments. Clean energy, infrastructure, manufacturing, that sort of thing. Manufacturing jobs in Illinois are on the rise and manufacturing jobs average as a starting at $89,000 a year. Now, what I wanted to remind you is that manufacturing in labor was where we as a community were employed at 70% in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. When Ronald Reagan came into office in the 1980s and put in place the war on drugs and stopped enforcing the antitrust laws and allowed for corporations to get huge tax cuts and drop the top tier tax rate from 74% to 25%, which allowed for CEOs to become gluttons and not reinvest in their companies, allowed for conglomerates to buy up, monopolies to buy up our little small companies and take them offshores, where we lost median manufacturing like Soft Sheen and corporations like that employed thousands of people from our communities. That's why elections have serious consequences, and we are continuing those consequences from Ronald Reagan, which I call Ronald Reaganism. All right, so $8.4 billion in private sector, $16.6 billion in public investments. Why is what we have now better than this? I don't know. $2.1 billion in funding from the Biden administration to provide affordable, reliable, high-speed internet in areas where we have had a complete darkness. Why what we have now is better than would have continued under Harris. $11.1 billion in transportation investments on roads, bridges, public transportation, rails, ports, and airports, which the qualifications for requests for qualifications went out on the third airport, the South Suburban Airport, because of the funding that through this bill, $11.1 billion. $2.6 billion in private sector commitments to invest in EVs and electric vehicles and electric battery plants, where they are building the electric plant in Kankakee that is going to employ more than, I think, 2,500 to 3,000 jobs. $1 billion for clean water across Illinois, where there are grants that people are getting their lead pipes replaced, which if you have a small building where the city of Chicago, they are replacing a lot of the lead pipes, where it would cost an average of $20,000 to $25,000 to put in a new service. Because of this funding, many people's homes in our communities are getting rid of their lead pipes. And you say this is better. $15.7 billion in the infrastructure law funding. We're talking about Illinois now. I'm not talking about across the country. This is money that has been earmarked for Illinois through the Department of the Treasury Department, through and from the Biden-Harris administration. $982.5 million for clean water, $337 million to replace toxic lead pipes, $249.8 million for transportation, $239 million to clean up pollution grounds, $1.4 billion to strengthen communities' readiness for climate change. $263 million in home energy rebates, cut energy costs by weatherizations, home, and replacing old appliances with more efficient models. $2.4 million for seniors and other Medicare beneficiaries. $399 1,000 individuals in Illinois signed up for health insurance through the Affordable Care Act marketplace during the open enrollment period of 2023, and will benefit from the average savings of $800 a month. So when you talk about the Democratic Party, I want for somebody who thinks that, you know, supporting the Republicans is a really good thing. I want for somebody to bring to me, and I will read those same accomplishments. I want for somebody to bring me one major piece of legislation that the Republicans have proposed to benefit the average working person or the average Black family in this country. That's just a little bit, and every week, because I guess I'm just growing tired of people myself. I'm just a little tired of people being misinformed and taking these culture wars, which they get triggered by things like, oh, well, you know, I don't want for transgender, because I know I'm going to make some hairs fly up. I don't want transgender, you know, playing males playing sports with girls in our schools. Let me give you a little tidbit so you can get off that track and stop allowing for yourself to be distracted. There are more than 8 million high school athletes across this country. 8 million. You know how many transgender people are playing sports in high school? Recorded transgenders that are playing sports in high school. Do you know how many? I bet you don't. 10. While they've got you focused on these issues that are really non-issues, and you're distracted by that, got you watching, you know, gay people and what they do. They got you watching that nonsense while your jobs and opportunities are being exported somewhere else. I bet most of you don't know that on Saturday morning, the Republicans in the Senate did what is called a reconciliation bill that gave $1.5 trillion in tax cuts, unpaid for, to the super wealthy in the Senate. Hopefully there will be some responsible Republicans in the House that will reject this. Now, it may not completely derail it, but hopefully there's going to be some Republican, sensible Republicans within the House. But this happened on Saturday morning. Most people didn't pay attention to it, and they did it so that you would not pay attention to it. But then you have this person who is trying to do whatever it is that he's trying to do to inflict harm around the globe. I fundamentally believe that he will fall on his own sword. He will eventually fall on his own sword. And this idea that, Trump is going to serve a third term, and all that sort of thing, I don't even think that's anything that we need to really pay a lot of attention to focusing on right now. What we have to focus on is making sure that the guy doesn't blow up the world. But that means that we have to get engaged. Now, I know there was these huge demonstrations over this past weekend and that sort of thing. I think we've learned that large crowds and demonstrations are important. Don't misunderstand. Demonstrations are absolutely important. When you have negotiated and you have not been able to reach any type of public agreement, then demonstration is really that next line of defense that we have. So I certainly acknowledge that. But what I'm saying is that we should not, or remember that large crowds don't necessarily result in a lot of votes. We saw that in this past election where there were large crowds at different events. But at the end of the day, there was a vote that didn't go the way that a lot of us wanted it to go. But we still have work to do here on our local level, and we can make a serious difference on our local level. Now, Brandon Johnson gave a speech. I wish I had a little time because I would play it. I would play it now, but I'll come back. And I may do something later this week, especially on this situation with Eileen O'Byrne. So in these last couple of minutes, let me just say, if you haven't, I want you to, I'm going to put it in the chat. If you haven't, text to this number, 909-1385, so that you can get into the text alert. We are going to have a Zoom meeting, our regular 10 by 10 to win Zoom meeting every Thursday night at 6:30. But we are going to be emphasizing on what our next steps are going to be to reject what the state's attorney is illegally doing. We have to engage ourselves in that. So I hope that all of you join on Thursday night so that we can organize ourselves to what the next steps are going to be. We are probably going to have to do a press conference, and we're certainly going to do, probably going to initiate a lawsuit that will stop Eileen Burke for trying to railroad black men, and black men who already have problems, to railroad more black men into a prison system, into a private trust of a prison system where they are making billions of dollars off of detaining young black men. Over 1.2 million black men incarcerated. Now, if we are 13%, 14% of the population, and we make up 30% of all prisons, that is to tell you that these are conditions that are produced, and the only way that we are going to fight those conditions is that we have got to engage ourselves together in that process. All right, so I'm going to look for you all on Thursday night. I may come back and do a follow-up podcast about this. I'm going to talk with these attorneys because I want to have attorneys to come on and give it from their perspective so that we are further educated about this. So stay tuned. Follow me on my page. Go to the People's Shows page, or please go register on my YouTube page at Mark Wallace, The People's Show, so that you can stay connected with us, and you can get the alerts for the new podcast that's going to be coming up. So look for one that is following up this way. I want to thank intellectualradio.com. Thank all of you for tuning in to the podcast. Continue to pay attention, and certainly continue to follow Martin Johnson on Live, Uncut, and Unedited. We both are working together to try to get information out. So I'm going to see you all a little bit later on this week, and I hope to see you on Thursday. Good night.